ask our panelists to imagine what will the commercial space look like 10 years from now. How will your commercial idea go from the drawing board to the production house? What are the technology gaps that you are trying to solve to make space business sustainable? What can you do in 10 years to make a case for going for to the moon, to Mars, not just for academic exploration and uh, quenching human thirst for knowledge, but what can you do about that for business? So to kick things off, I would like to invite Mr. Arun Ramchandani. Mr. Arun Ramchandani is the co-chair of the FICCI Aerospace and Defense Committee. I will not be reading out all bios because we have a lot of and there's a lot of things to read. So to all our friends who are joining in online and everyone here, please welcome Mr. Arun Ramchandani. Can we have a hand, please?
So thank you, Chirag, and good afternoon, everybody. We have today with us a bevy of specialists from different countries in the space domain who are going to imagine the future of commercial space by 2030. So welcome to all of you. Welcome also to the officials and specialists from the Indian Space Research Organization. Warm welcome to all the international and Indian participants, members of the media, and of course the organizing committee of the Federation of India, the Chamber of Indian Industry and Commerce. It gives me great pleasure to be here as we deliberate on our vision for Space 2030 with a focus to build a sustainable space business. Communication, navigation, Earth observation, reconnaissance and intelligence, defense and security, mineral exploration, space tourism, interplanetary habitats, and many more such sub-industries within the space industry have made space the fourth economic frontier. Human innovation has been the enabler for human exploration. As humanity expands its footprints further into space on a quest to enable the progress beyond where we are today, the global space economy is growing rapidly from the estimated levels of about 350 billion today to over $1 trillion economy by the time we are there in 2030. Coming to the Indian context, the Indian Space Research Organization has already planned many space missions in the next 5 years, which includes the human flight mission Gaganyaan, the Moon, Venus and Mars mission, or the Mangalyaan 2 mission, all by 2024, the AstroSat-2 and space station missions maybe around 2025. Along with ISRO and Indian government, India needs the private industry to grow and contribute significantly to the space sector. This would enable India to emerge as a leader in the global space sector. 2020-2021 saw private space crew missions in suborbital launches and space tourism by SpaceX, Boeing, Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic. Today's space tourism is believed to be the precursor to human space settlement tomorrow. Reusable rockets have been a game changer in this arena and in bringing down costs, thus propelling many players into human space flight industry. Space travel will be a collaborative multinational venture and effort. Advances in technology coupled with human imagination have brought science fiction concepts like human Mars mission and moon bases much closer to reality. These are interesting times for the space industry, as planning for interplanetary missions such as mining the moon or asteroids or deep space satellites is already underway. Let us look at the global industry size and its growth prospects. The global satellite services market is projected to grow at a CAGR of close to 3% from 2020 levels of about 122 billion to about 150 billion over the next 5 years by 2026. Launch services global market is expected to grow at a CAGR of close to 16% from current levels of about 12 billion to a size of about 28 billion by 2026. The year 2020 has seen the highest ever private sector investment in a single calendar year in the space sector. The growing number of special purpose acquisition companies or SPACs also have the potential to attract capital for long-term investment in the sector. The growth of the sector in the short term is expected to be driven by satellite services. Many companies from across industries are using data from satellite imagery to determine environmental impact of their key activities. With increasing focus on ESG, satellite-based services may remain in high demand. As the need for satellite services progressively increases, it is also likely to create demand for launching of newer satellites. The technologies developed to meet the demand for launching newer satellites is then likely to boost more complex forms of launch vehicles that are suitable for deep space exploration and space tourism. The key to building a sustainable space business in this ever-evolving domain is to have a long-term vision. The vision should be aligned with the ever-changing requirements of governments and keeping in mind the demand from commercial sectors that use satellites and space-based products and services. Building space for Earth-friendly companies, that is, companies focused on goods and services produced in space for use in Earth, such as telecommunications and internet infrastructure, Earth observation capabilities, national security satellites, and more, will hold a significant share of commercial opportunities in the global space market. The industry is now also seeing investment in capital-intensive domains such as human spaceflight, national security, satellite communication, and space data analysis, which would be highly rewarding in the long term. All this notwithstanding, the space industry faces certain challenges during this privatization process, as there are many issues related to ownership of critical space assets and the corresponding IPRs, transfer of technology, financing, insurance, liabilities, and the entire legal framework for space operations. This will need serious consideration both by the government and the private sector players. Increasing number of satellites in space is also creating concern about space debris, which could be a major threat for new satellite and rocket launches. Government agencies are struggling to keep track of orbital debris. Notwithstanding, I am positive and confident that today's interaction will bring out many opportunities and areas for cooperation amongst all the stakeholders in the sector. This session aims to imagine how we will define commercial space in an era with human activity on Earth, the Moon, and Mars. Our panel will deliberate on what the future commercial space ecosystem will look like and how it can be made viable and sustainable. So with this, I would hand over to our next speaker, Ms. Shelley Brunswick, for her keynote address.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege to be joining all of you, and I want to welcome all the distinguished visitors, guests, heads of agencies, so thank you so much for joining us today. My goal, here we go, we're going to have some fun slides and really talk about what is the global space ecosystem, what does it really mean, and how does it benefit us here on Earth. So next slide, please. So at Space Foundation, we believe when you advocate for innovation, you better life here on Earth. And that's our goal. So next slide, please. So this is a little bit about what we do at Space Foundation every day. So next slide, please. So what you could see in that video is really what is the global space ecosystem. We are talking at Space Week about returning and going forward to the moon and on to Mars and beyond. But what we want to highlight is how space benefits us right here on Earth. And in the video you could see healthcare and transportation, education, the Internet of Things. Those are all part of the space ecosystem. Next slide, please. So at Space Foundation, we are a U.S. nonprofit that does business internationally, and we have three main divisions. I've had a wonderful opportunity to talk to some of you in the audience, and you participate or are looking at participating in our Symposium 365 division, which is your trusted source for information. That's where our annual symposium takes place in Colorado Springs, where we bring the global space community together every April. We also do our research and analysis through that department, and that's the Space Report. Many of you are familiar with both the quarterly product as well as the online database. We do global partnerships because we believe in collaborating. 50 years ago, space was for a couple countries. Now space is for every country and nation and citizen on planet Earth. So it's really about global alliances. And then the third division is our Center for Innovation and Education, because that's where we're going to unlock our innovation, and that's the human capital and capacity building. And those are our formal education programs for kindergarten through 12th grade, teaching teachers, as well as entrepreneurship programs. Next slide, please. So we've been talking a little bit with the audience about what is the global space economy. So defining that, in 2020, Space Foundation said through our space report that the global economy was $447 billion. And as we heard earlier, it's projected to grow by 2030 to over $1 trillion. Bank of America thinks it could be 1.4 trillion by 2030. And then by 2040, we're looking at over 3 trillion. So you're looking at exponential growth. The other highlight is 80% of that is commercial. So what that means is it's products and services that we're benefiting right here on Earth. So that's jobs right here on Earth. How many of you work in space right now? How many of you actually go to space to work in space? Nobody's hand is up. Those jobs for space are primarily here on Earth. Now eventually we will send some astronauts to Mars and so on, but for the majority of the space workforce, you're here on Earth creating products and services that benefit governments and individuals and other companies. The other highlight is more than 85 countries participate in space. There are countries that want to participate in space, and there are countries that want to utilize space technology. In essence, that's every nation on planet Earth, and every citizen will be using space technology. Next slide, please. So what are those technologies? What are the emerging technologies I'm talking about? So you saw some launch vehicles earlier and satellites, and those are definitely telecommunications, We definitely use those. But data analytics, energy and energy storage solutions. To go to Mars, we have to have different energy and energy storage solutions than we're currently using. We also need those storage solutions here on Earth. Medical, to live on Mars or in outer space, it's devastating to the human body. We weren't designed this way. So by curing some of the medical ailments that will develop by living in space and microgravity environment, we can solve those same challenges here on Earth, such as, we have cataract surgery and mammogram technology, artificial limbs, and so hearing implants have all come from the space industry. We also look at advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, robotics, artificial intelligence, virtual reality. So if this all sounds familiar, that technology is technology we're all using, but it's really part of the space industry. So next slide, please. And for those of you who would like to check my math, as we say, I know I have many professors in the room today, you can go to the NASA Technology Transfer Office or the European Space Agency Tech Transfer Office. There are thousands of patents that are waiting to be commercialized from the space industry, and unlock that innovation and bring it here to citizens on planet Earth. Next slide, please. So what are some of the technologies we're utilizing every day? Well, I see several. Every one of you have a cell phone. I see that. There are several types of space technology in your cell phone. But formulated food, so we think about our children and taking formulated food that came from the space industry. Or fire retardant clothing. When we think of firefighters or buying cribs or clothing for our children, it's fire retardant. That came from the space industry. Better weather predicting. Precision agriculture can increase our crop yields by 10%. That's all based on space technology. So when we think about space technology, it's really part of our everyday life, and it betters life for humanity. Next slide, please. So here's a little video about some of that technology that has been brought to you over the last 50 years from the space program. So next slide, please. So I don't know if some of those technologies might have surprised you, the athletic activities that are used every day. It's kind of exciting when you think about it. The other part we're going to talk about is, so the innovation is great, but we have to have the human capital side, the capacity building side, to make that future space economy happen, that $1 to $3 trillion unlocking of innovation. And so when we think about 50 years ago with NASA, we think that was primarily males. It was primarily a couple countries. Now we're looking at, it's geographic, it's around the world. It's men and women, all ages, and all skill sets. It's interdisciplinary now. So we still need STEM professionals, scientists, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But we also need project managers and entrepreneurs and business leaders and manufacturing and technicians. So the opportunity for all to now come into the space industry exists. And what we need to do is bring that innovative ideas into the classroom as young as possible, K through 12, kindergarten through 12th grade. Because if we bring these space careers into the classroom of everyday learning, then we can help students understand what the career paths could be to fill those jobs that are just around the corner. If they're not already here, they're going to be here in a short amount of time. And so we also need to be lifelong learners. because all that technology you saw, it's rapidly changing the jobs we all have. We have all adapted. I know we have a wonderful audience on Zoom. 2 years ago, I didn't even know what Zoom was. How many knew what Zoom was? But the pandemic has enlightened that we can now be virtual and reach out globally and be more connected than ever before. And so we're going to continue to have new technology develop that we're going to incorporate into our jobs, or our jobs may change, or jobs may go away, and new jobs will be developed. So not only do we need to inspire the next generation to look at pursuing these type of careers, we also have to help them have the mindset to be innovators and entrepreneurs and be resilient, because as the technology changes, they're going to continue to be reskilled and upskilled as well. So next slide, please. So I have enjoyed starting the discussion with you today. If you're looking for more information about Space Foundation or any of the programs we offer, we do have a QR code. But one of the things I'll leave you with is, many times people ask me, why do you do what you do? So I will share just briefly. I was in the U.S. Air Force. I retired after a wonderful career doing space acquisition, and I secured the job and became the Chief Operating Officer at Space Foundation, and I love it. But the reason I'm doing this is because I want to change the world. And I'm one person, but when I partner with you, together, we can all change the world and make it a better place and create more access and opportunity for all in the new global space ecosystem. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brunswick, for really setting the tone for what I think will be an excellent session. The questions that were asked, the ideas that were posed, I think some of the things that we will be exploring further as we go on in this session today. It is now my pleasure and privilege to invite our chief guest for the event, Dr. Valnathan Manswamy. We have spoke a few times just before the start of the presentation. The doctor has a lot to say and a lot of potential to explore, and I hope to hear more from him now. Please. Can we have a hand, please?
Hey, good afternoon and thank you. The narrative that I want to share this afternoon with you is around space for sustainable business. So in the midst of growth potential that's happening at a national scale, I wanted to demonstrate how a space agency reimagines itself from a business model perspective. Next slide. So a space agency at a national level is essentially set up for a very specific mandate from government. Look at it from a policy perspective. But the two key aspects that you have to ponder about is the mandate. So is the agency going to deliver on its mandate that it was set to deliver on? And the second aspect is the sustainability. Will the agency be sustainable? But I think where we're heading at the moment, it's not looking at it from an institutional perspective. We are looking at it from an ecosystem perspective. And I want to demonstrate how we're actually doing that. In fact, right now, we are busy changing our business model. And there's a program that we have around change management called Reimagining the Space Agency in SANS. Next slide. So just to give you a sense of the strength of the South African National Space Agency, more from an African perspective, we are the only African country that has designed, developed, manufactured, and operated satellites. So there's many African countries that own satellites, but the majority of them, if not the rest of them, have actually procured satellites from abroad. So the indigenous capability for satellite manufacturing in Africa sits with us. The biggest and most advanced ground segment in Africa sits in South Africa. The second biggest segment is in Kenya, but it's owned by the Italians. So we've got about 70 different antenna systems on the ground, including the teleports that are coming through, like the OneWebs and so on. And we cover every conceivable part of the electromagnetic spectrum from that ground segment. And then the largest satellite imagery catalog in Africa. So our data goes back to 1972, when the first Landsat satellite came on board online. And so we've got an archive that extends from 1972 up until the present day. So we do about 15 to 18 satellite parcels download per day. And then we also have the only accredited International Space Weather Center in Africa. And I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in that area. Next slide. So just to give you a perspective in terms of the growth potential that we are hitting at the moment. So 2 years ago, and this is in rands, and I'll convert that to rupees, Indian rupees just now. But 2 years ago, we were sitting around 150 million rand. And we realized that this is very small change for a space sector. And so we started very sort of in an aggressive way trying to look for the funding and investments for the space sector. And right now we're sitting around 350 million rands. But in the next 2 years, we've got a pipeline of investment projects that has come through. And we're sitting at around 18 billion rands. And if you do the maths, it's more than 100 times the funding that we started 2 years ago. So just to give you a sense in terms of rupees, the next, if you can click through. So we started with 785 million rupees, and we're going to be landing around 95 billion Indian rupees in the space of 4 years, essentially. And that's a very significant growth. There's a whole pipeline of projects coming through, including telecoms, and I'll talk about that in the next slide or two. So I gave you a perspective in terms of the current core capabilities in South Africa. Next. So if I take the satellite engineering component, we have an initiative. It's around 4.5 billion rands, which is around 1 billion Indian rupees, for what is called a space infrastructure hub. So this is now one of the top priorities of government, the top 5 of government. And that's going to see a whole suite of constellation of satellites coming through that's going to be built in South Africa. And that will also include the data segment, the ground segment. So we're looking at the full value chain. We're also building a concurrent design facility. We partnered with the European Space Agency. So this is an engineering facility which will help us to design satellites on the fly within 3 to 4 weeks, essentially. And then we're also currently upgrading our assembly integration and testing facility, which we're currently busy with at the moment. Next. When you look at the biggest and most advanced ground segment, and I should mention that we actually supported the Chandrayaan-2 mission from South Africa through our ground segment. But we're also setting up a new ground station in a place called Maikisfontein in South Africa. We've been in conversation with NASA around the upcoming Lunar and Mars missions. So we're looking at hosting the 4th deep space network. So there's one in Australia, Spain, and the US. The 4th one, which will be a redundant site, will be in South Africa, if all goes well. So we've done the impact assessment, and we're just looking at the investments around the ground infrastructure. But it's not going to be purely just for NASA. We're looking at other agencies as well. So the Indian missions and so on will be a unique place for that. And we're also looking at the teleport services. So these are the mega constellation of satellites for providing internet access globally. So the ground segment will be hosted in South Africa for a few of those missions. And then telecoms. So we're looking at a national telecom satellite. In fact, on Tuesday, we were in conversation with the government departments to get the strategy approved. Next slide. We also, so one of the biggest, by the way, radio astronomy telescope initiative in the world is called the Square Kilometre Array. It's actually a data problem. And the data volumes that will be shunted through that particular radio telescope will be anywhere between 10 to 100 times the global internet traffic. So some of the technologies we're looking at in that telescope is pretty competitive. So there's a lot of R&D investment that's going on in South Africa. In fact, we spent over 1 billion Indian rupees around the Meerkat, which is 64 antenna dish. And the first light for that dish, I think we found about 1,300 new galaxies in the southern hemisphere, which was not seen before, just through that one instrument. So we're going to look at about 3,000 antennas and planar phased arrays and so on. But we've used that capacity to build what is called Digital Earth South Africa. So you have an archive of satellite imagery, so we're building what is called a data cube, and we're stacking that. So you can, as opposed to trudging through the data and processing, which takes you 3 to 6 months, we can now do it within 2 to 3 hours, essentially, with this platform. And we've been working with the Council for Geosciences in Australia, and they piloted this. And we've now taken over the Program Management Office for Digital Earth Africa. So this is Earth observation data for the whole African continent. And we will be responsible for the operations of that in the next 2 years, essentially. And then we're also setting up a new data visualization center to look at Earth observation and showcasing from a high-tech point of view. And then on the space weather side, we're actually right at this moment in time, the next building a new space weather center. So it's a 24/7 operations. So the International Civil Aviation Organization has passed a set of regulation that says that all flights must have space weather information on board. It's regulated as of November last year. And this information on the African continent will come from the South African National Space Agency. So we have 80 years of history around space weather research in South Africa. It started in the 1930s. And then we're also looking at a global navigation satellite services. So there's a satellite-based augmentation system that's going to be operationalized. We've piloted that and proved that it can work. So we can reduce the error signals to within a meter, essentially in the Southern African region. So we're going to operationalize that. And then we're looking at future science missions to answer some of the specific science questions. Next slide. So what I've demonstrated there is just to show you essentially the core advantage capabilities that we have and how we're intending to build upon that. But what we, as I said, we're not looking at it from an institutional point of view, we're looking at it from an ecosystem point of view. And apart from the products and services, which is in the top layer, the kind of aspects that you need to look at from the building blocks perspective is human capital. We just had a presentation around that. So we engage 30,000 students, we train up or support 60 to 70 master's PhD students every year. And so we have also programs, even accommodation and a science museum, mobile laboratories inside of the agency. Industry support. So we've now set up, in partnership with the industry, an industry forum called ZA Space Inc., South Africa Space Inc. So the whole industry is represented by this industry body which speaks to the agency. And the idea is to co-create the ecosystem. And that's essentially what we're doing at the moment, and I'll speak about that just now. And then infrastructure is quite key. International partnerships is very key. So I'm just rushing through it very quickly. And then there's the mission aspects, and we're looking at the strategy and the business models, policy and regulations. Next slide. Now, from the industry perspective, as I indicated, that the agency is not going to be responsible for the implementation of these programs from an agency perspective. So we're going to bring the industry in, contract them, and look at how they can add value to the space value chain. So on the upstream, we'll prime contract industry to actually build the satellites. So we don't build that internally. We just look at the high-level system engineering, acquisition management from the agency perspective. The rest is actually contracted to industry. On the downstream side, products and services, exactly the same. In fact, we have an investment program, sort of a grant mechanism where we dish that out to industry to develop the products and services. And so the industry, again, will be engaged at the downstream. And then we're also moving and shifting our target market from primarily servicing the needs of government to also the private sector. So your insurance sector needs satellite imagery. Your banking sector wants the same. So we're trying to expand our market segment. So there's a big potential for industry to lock in into this value chain. Upstream, downstream, but also the market segment. Next slide. So we started to engage the industry in terms of how do we co-create this ecosystem. So it's not us just enforcing, giving policy directions, but having that conversation where we kind of understand each other's viewpoints and we create a strategy in terms of the roadmap that we're going to be advocating for and adopting moving forward. So we look at the current realities. Next slide. So what we're doing at the moment, we want to take a snapshot view in terms of the landscape, the health of the landscape, of the ecosystem. So we're doing a number of audits just to assess what that looks like. Next, so we're doing a gap analysis. So we look at the shared vision and a gap analysis. So how do we plug in the gaps that we currently have with small, medium enterprises, new entrants? So we're looking at industry clusters, new incubators. So we have this model called centers of competence. So it's a networked arrangement of universities, private sector, public sector. And so we bring in the investor funding into that. And the idea is that to create specific technology platforms. Let's say, so for example, South Africa is very clued up on optical sensors. We're currently exporting some of our optical sensors to the UK as an example. So we want to set up centers of excellence around that. And we're also looking at the transformation, the fourth industrial revolution. How do we bring that? Artificial intelligence, big data. So just to modernize the current industry locally. Then we develop a detailed roadmap, and next. And so what we're looking at there is local beneficiation. How do we create the investment opportunities that there is local beneficiation in South Africa? And we're looking at public-private partnerships, but very key, and I think Shelley mentioned that, is the intellectual property. What is the intellectual framework property to create those sustainable business so that you have an open innovation model, that you pull in ideas from the system and then you leverage and capitalize on that. And then our shared vision, which is I think what is very key for the sustainable business aspect, the next, is how do we create export-ready sectors? So we've also figured out that our industries are actually building satellites for international clients already. So we've already created from the initial set of investments and now export-ready sector, but we're trying to grow that and explode that a little bit. What's starting to kick in now is the financial sustainability, and then we're looking at a Pan-African agenda. In fact, our vision is to leverage on the growth opportunity in Africa by 2030. It's the same agenda. We have a National Development Plan 2030, SDGs 2030, there's Agenda 2063. And in fact, we've been working with the African Union to set up an African space program, and there's an African Space Agency that's kicking in at the moment. So there's a lot happening in the African continent. Growth potential is explosive from that perspective. So I just wanted to share with you how the agency is rethinking its business and financial model, but looking at it more from a space ecosystem point of view rather than an insular view around the institution itself. So it's looking at it outward perspective rather than an inward perspective. Thank you for your attention. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Munsami, for giving us the big picture on how we can expect the space ecosystem to evolve in the next few years. We hope to continue our strong collaboration with South Africa to bring in space technology and the fruits of space technology, not just to our own respective countries, but to all the people of the world together. It is now my pleasure to go to our next event. We are having an MOU signing event. Keeping with the theme for Space 2030, we are looking at how the established players, how people who have found a footing in this field can now mentor and bring forward the next generation of the space technology explorers as we make our way towards becoming space explorers. I would like to hand over the mic now to Mr. Lakshmesh so that we can have the MOU signing event. Thank you all.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and all space enthusiasts. This is a great session today about sustainability and sustainable business in space. Innovation, entrepreneurship, and collaborative stakeholder value creation have been the core values of Larsen & Toubro. Larsen & Toubro is an Indian multinational in core domains of construction, manufacturing, services, and engineering. Space sector in India, led by ISRO and its unique culture, has been an amazing example of how a sector is grown in a collaborative fashion. And we, continuing with that spirit led by ISRO, we at Larsen & Toubro have established a dedicated aerospace R&D system design and engineering center. and are trying to focus on developing new age, cutting edge technologies. And continuing with our organization spirit of collaboration and collaborative stakeholder value creation, today I'm glad to share with all of you, as L&T, we wish to nurture, handhold, and support startups in their pursuit of creating new age technologies. And I'm glad to invite Mr. Arun Ramchandani, who is Executive Vice President, Defense and Aerospace at Larsen & Toubro, to do the honors for L&T. So may I please? I would request Mr. Sudhir Kumar, because he represents ISRO and also has been a strong proponent of how industry, large industries must nurture startups. So please, we need your presence. Thank you very much. I would invite Vivek. Where is Vivek? Vivek, please. So Vivek represents FICCI, Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industries, and there can't be a better presence here today in this event. I would like Sanjay from, we have first Bellatrix. Fine, I think let's, Rohan from Bellatrix to please come over here, and also Sanjay from Dhruva, please. So Dhruva Space is engaged in developing satellite power systems, and that's where we are engaging with them. And Bellatrix is in developing new age propulsion systems for launch vehicles and satellites. So we would like to get into development of co-development or co-creations of new products and technologies in this domain. So thank you very much for being here today, and I'm sure that this kind of collaborative effort led by ISRO and with large organizations like L&T and among startups would actually take up the new reforms that have come in the Indian space domain for creating space as a new economy in a sustainable way. Thank you very much. So I would request Raghavendra to please come out with the MOA documents, and in the auspicious presence of Mr. Sudhir Kumar,
सामने क्यों खड़ा हो रहे हैं? सामने जा खड़ा रहा।
Sanjay. Thank you very much, sir. Sudhir Kumar, I would request you to say a few words on this occasion. Because it's all your support and your blessing.
Nothing. It's God, blessings of the God. I'm very, elevated because I was part of the MOU signing ceremony between HAL and L&T for one occasion for a big contract. And yesterday only Mr. Somnath was telling the corporates have to take care of the startups. It's something like that. You call it as blessing, or you call it as cooperation, you call it as a support. Is surprised to see that two very important, our boys, I should say that our boys are being taken care of by none other than L&T, who is the strategic partner of ISRO. Because right from 1970s, they were with us. I don't think in space domain, much difference is there between ISRO and L&T. That's why we are entangled together in such a way that there we don't find any difference between the L&T culture and L&T association and ISRO association, because they live with us and we live with them all through the thing. And I'm more happy that Radhakrishnan was witnessing this one on the other side when such a kind of beautiful incident was happening. Who is the rather forerunner for the industry? I don't have any words to say. I'm very delighted and happy to witness this occasion. Thank you.
I'll just say that this is a great platform to share this collaborative effort. We at L&T have been fortunate to be mentored and groomed by ISRO, and it's been a 5-decade-long space domain. I won't say that we are either mentoring or supporting any of these startup companies. I think it's a cooperation. We look forward to actually being able to leverage the kind of new ideas, thoughts that they are creating, and to take it to market, to allow it to get commercialized and to make it sustainable. So I certainly do look forward to this collaborative effort, and I believe that the innovation and entrepreneurship of our young people needs to be supported and needs to be kind of encouraged and maybe benefited from. We are lucky to have an ecosystem of many young enterprising people today in the Indian nation, and we certainly do look forward to benefiting from this.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to, I'm rather honored to be getting into partnership with none other than L&T in presence of ISRO. That too on the occasion of Space Week, where we celebrate Yuri Gagarin's first visit to space way back in 61-62. So I have no more words to say, but with the expertise which L&T has in developing hardware for space and the world-class infrastructure which they have built, and the technical know-how of ISRO, and our new age work which we are doing to enable the topic sustainable access to space, or doing everything sustainably in space. I for one believe that by the year 2050, space will be the biggest employer known for mankind, just like the IT industry today. And these are baby steps which we are taking, and I'm sure on the shoulders of giants we stand. With that saying, I'd like to thank you, Arun sir and Lakshmi sir from L&T, Sudhir Kumar sir, who has known us since long, and Radhakrishnan sir and everyone from FICCI for organizing this. Ladies and gentlemen, space is for everyone, and we all hope to be a part of that journey. Thank you so much.
I think today is a great day. I think Indian space program is well known around the world. We've been supporting a lot of missions worldwide, but you would not very frequently come across companies from India fitting into the supply chain of these mega constellations. I think L&T has been supporting the Indian space program for over 3 decades now. ISRO has been doing a lot of work, especially NSIL has been supporting a lot of requirements globally. There are over 300 satellites of more than 34 countries that have been launched from India. And as the co-presenters today before me had mentioned that, together we can do a lot. I'm looking forward to working with L&T together to meet some of these global demands, coming up, in the future. I think I can very confidently say that we look forward to becoming your partner in space power, building space grade solar panels for the global requirements. Thank you, Fiki. Thank you, the CBPO office, Sudhir Kumar sir, and thank you everyone for making this happen.
बंद हो गया जाओ
Thank you, Rohan. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Mr. Ramchandani, for this excellent glimpse into what the future is going to hold. I hope one day, in the near future, before my first white hairs start to pick out, I start to see Sanjay and Rohan sign more MOUs with even younger people, fresh out of college. You guys are both younger than me, which scares me, and I hope to be terrified in the next couple of years. So congratulations to both of you, and thank you for blessing us with this moment. I would like to now invite our speakers for our theme address. We have Dr. Rajkumar join us from ISRO. Dr. Rajkumar has storied, experience in this space, and he is probably one of the best to tell us about how to link space technology with the Earth. The blue economy, in fact, ISRO started off with its first contributions to mankind, to Indians, in helping out the fishermen, in helping out farmers, and Dr. Rajkumar himself can tell you how his work and ISRO's work has helped out the blue economy in India. He will be talking more on the future of space technology for all of us here, and I am excited to hear more about what we can do together. Dr. Rajkumar. Again, come on, round of hands.
Good afternoon. Yeah, can I have this slide, please? Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, I think tone has been set already, and then we have seen the signing of MOU also. So no need to talk more about that, what the space can do and what ISRO can do, because we are already seeing the fruits of our early years, as well as the father of the space science, space domain, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, who wanted to do space only for mainly for the civil purpose as well as for the societal benefits. And that is more important. I think whatever we are doing, technology development and all other things, it is main thing, after all it goes for the society only. So that is the major thing, and then ISRO, as you know, it is doing for that. And we are having many segments there, so I will not talking more about that, because about ISRO everybody I think here knows more. So all those topics I will not taking, and I will talking about mostly that what is application point of view, that is a application domain, what we are doing for the nation as well for the international domain also, and what others can do together. That is more important, because we ourselves cannot do each and everything. We are trying to do from our bit, from the space domain, whatever limited manpower we are having. But many more things are coming up, and then we can do together. So next please. When we are talking about sustainability, in my mind, first thing, sustainable goals, because those are important. So if you say there are many sustainable goals, UN has defined, there are 17 goals are there, and most of them can be done, as Shelly was also talking about, that everything from the space, whatever we see or do, space is the in thing in that. But in this also, from society point of view, many goals you can see we can do from the space. Next please. Yeah, you see all of this, no poverty, no hunger, good health, all those domains, most of the domains, space is, we can say, the answer for those things. And all those are interconnected also. Those are all those things are there. Next please. If we go from the space point of view or ISRO point of view, we are trying to do our bit from the many products what we are telling, and not only the product information as well as the solutions also. And that is the more important. I will coming upon later on. So now everybody wants the solution, not the product. Earlier we were thinking of what we can provide the data, and then people will start doing that with the data. But that is done up to a little bit. But overall now, if we are seeing from each and every sector, I will come upon some of the sectors what we are doing. Most thing is everybody want overall what is for me. How you can solve this problem, not the only by giving that. So we were trying to do that, how we can provide the solution, maybe the concept we will provide, and then from the commercial arms people, from the partners, they can build the solution themselves or with our design from our side, and then they can put to the everybody, to society. We are trying to have many monitoring for the many assets as well as resources from the ocean, atmosphere, and terrestrial. So those natural resources are being monitored at various scales. And if you see the sector, there are many sectors: agriculture sector, water sector, as well as cryosphere. That is very important, not only from the Indian point of view. So all these poles, when we are talking about climate changes, all this Arctica, there also a lot of resources are there, as well as the climate change point of view. What are the changes are happening, and that is affecting all of us. We are seeing as a disaster point of view also. So all those things we are doing. And we are trying our bit through some of the portals what we are having. Many of you may be knowing that is some of the portals what we call the as well as solutions also. Similarly to other portals, what is meteorology, oceanography, satellite data. From that we provide some type of experimental forecast, experimental solutions for the many agencies, as well as this type of data, as well as the Vedas, which is providing analytical solutions for that. Next please. If you see from from where I am coming, National Remote Sensing Center. So our, if you briefly, I will talk about. We are doing everything when satellite starts giving the data. Satellite data acquisition. How you get the acquisition? You have to have the ground stations. So for ground station, there are a lot of scope is there, and today itself we are talking about. We need to have many ground stations. So we can provide the solutions, we can provide the designs and concepts. And many people can come up, and then they can have their own ground stations for that. So for that we are there. Then we come when the satellite is there, ground station is there, data processing. So data processing, many complex data processing solutions are there to provide. So in that we are there. Then the dissemination of the data to the users and everywhere. There our role comes in a very big way. In addition to that, in National Remote Sensing Center, we are having aerial services also. That is very important from the view if somebody want to have their own new systems, you want to check it for that. Then you cannot go directly on the satellite. You have to go from either from aerial services or somewhere else. So that aerial services we are having, and then we are having geoportals as well as information services we are providing. In addition to that, many application demonstration. And the most important is the capacity building, because as I told, we are only few people, we cannot do. So capacity building has to be there. So we are also doing, and is 2 centers of ISRO are there. Indian Institute of Remote Sensing in Dehradun, they are also doing capacity building, as well as the Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology. That is a new center is there. Institute, I can say, not center. They are providing this all this human resources, and some of the, we are seeing the young startups are coming from there only. So that is one thing. Next, please. So these are some of the, I can say, some of the SDGs, what we call it, sustainable development goals, which everybody can be a partner of that. One of the example is space-based information support, what we call it SysDP. It is basically from the Indian point of view, if you see, the whole solution you want, it is here, it is there. From the, starting from the very, very high resolution to the coarser resolution, you have the, for the all the cities as well as for the village resources, because that is more important from the point of view of India. If it is in the rural sector, how you, if you want to go, you want to penetrate, then there are many solutions. It can be provided for decentralized planning. So from the panchayat level, for the block level, how these things will be there using the space-borne data. So all those things are being done, and then it is required a lot of scope is still there. Not only this. Next, please. Similarly, we are having for the health resource repository, the NHRR we called. There also, last 2 years, we have seen how much it is required, infrastructure is required, not only infrastructure, but how to reach to the people in the rural side. That is very, very difficult without this technology, mobile technology, space technology, as well as the location services. Those are where all this required, in addition to the whatever space-borne data sets is there. So whole solution is we are trying to build up, but we cannot build up our own. So we are with some ministry like Ministry of Health. We have started that, Ministry of Panchayati Raj. With these two ministries, we are trying to build up, and that can be only a demonstrative solution. But we need if you want to really bring it to the national level, it is required from everywhere. Has to be, everybody has to be there. So such thing is are being done. That is very, very most important, I can say, for the health. Now we have seen in 2 years. That is one of the most important part. Next, please. Then third important is agriculture. What we have seen agriculture point of view. There are many sectors are in agriculture itself. When we talk about that, how the agriculture growth is happening, and the supply sector. The supply chain has to be there, proper supply chain, because many times we have seen that wastage of the food, even then farmers are having, but it is not going to the actual people. So for that you should know the what type of yield is there, how much yield is there, classification of all those things, as well as the precision agriculture. So for these also we can go ahead and we can do together. Next, please. Then another thing is what is the water, what is the food, then water is there. Water, plenty of water. We say all of our India is all three sides the ocean is there, water is there, but really potable water and then drinkable water for irrigation, all this water from where water resources are there, what type of groundwater resources, as well as from the, if you are coming from the cryosphere, that Himalayan how much water is coming, how much drainage is going. So all those things also we are trying to do, and there's a monitoring of all those things, regular time scale, as well as also from climate point of view also how much is melting is taking place, how much it will affect the climate. So all those things for that point of view, this is also important. Next comes the rural development. There's really as I talked about in the health resources also. But otherwise, from the point of view of you know about the Manrega scheme, where the resource, how much people can be given the job, and then monitoring of those jobs, monitoring of the projects, if it can be done. It can be done really from the satellite data, high resolution satellite data is requirement of that, as well as the using the some applications or mobile applications what has been developed. So through that we are monitoring all these schemes, at which scale are there, how much is project is over, and how much new schemes will be coming. So all those things also you require. Then as Nikhil was talking about that, next please. Yeah, blue economy. Blue economy is actually now it is coming a big way. Government has also approved one this very big project, Deep Ocean Mission project also. In that, not only from the deep ocean point of view, but because there are a lot of resources, but from the coastal point of view also, lot of resources are there, as well as from if you see from the ecosystem point of view, we have to monitor this coastal ecosystem. So there also we have done a lot, like from the navigation point of view, you are doing ship navigation, you can do from the satellite data, as well as one of the first example was done from the ISRO, from the Ocean Set mission, where we had the potential fishery zone. So that was the starting point, but now using the many other sensors, we are able to do a much better way, and it has seen that all those people are getting a lot of benefits through this data as well as Navik scheme also. Then comes the next step, please. Energy from the point of view clean energy, which is very required. What we call the renewable energy, like wind energy or solar energy, as well as wave energy, tidal energy, lot of. So those scope of this, how much potential is there, that we have shown clearly from the satellite data, as well as how much will be available from the forecast point of view, because that is very important if you really want to audit that. So all those things can be done and are being done. And for all those things, as I told, next please, there are some of the portals through which we are trying to do. One is the Bhuvan portal. A lot of satellite data is available, whatever satellite data from the ISRO, most of that is being made available to the, and a number of applications through the central ministry, state ministries are also being done. All the ministries, what I was talking about, that rural ministry, agriculture ministry, housing ministry, all those ministries, even earth sciences, all those things are being done, and these are being supported. Even the COVID time also, you might have seen, we have supported all this that time. Next, another portal I was talking, meteorology oceanographic, that large amount of data is available from our sensor as well for other sensors from the foreign also. And then type of forecast, experimental forecast, nowcasting for short range forecasting, as well as from the disaster point of view. These things are being made available. Next. Similarly, another portal I was talking about, the Vedas, which is for the Earth visualization through the 2 dimension, and then there are analytics, through analytics, because as is being talked about in Africa, digital Earth is there, digital Africa. So similar thing, what we are trying to do from the ISRO side also, digital Earth from the India, so that all these data whatever available, it can be made available, and then on the fly itself. So no need to download the data. Then another comes the disaster point of view. Next, please. Yeah, another portal is a database for emergency management. So all type of disasters for the management. This is one of the portal which is being monitored by us and being made by us. All type of disasters, it can be monitored there, and then this monitoring are being done in regular level, like present floods also, many these 2 floods, and Uttarakhand as well as Kerala. Next comes the next please. I think this last information system for climate and environmental study. This is not only for India, that is for all over the globe. How the climate is being changed. There are many issues are there, and then how to monitor them so that it can be really plugged in, and then we can have some of the essential climate variables which we can be monitored through the space. Those are being done on all the sectors, in the terrestrial, ocean, the cryosphere also. So next please. Yeah. So I was talking, all these things are what we are talking, we are trying to do, but still much more has to be done, and these are the opportunity, what we call it. We need the systematic as well as demand-based data acquisition, because without data nothing can be done. And then first and foremost is the free and analysis ready data, ARD, what we are being talking about, as well as the solutions. So we have to provide the solution and information, not only the product, as I was talking. So these solutions has to be made together, and all of you, I think together we can think about what is required, because we can think about some of the products and some of the solution, but for that also ingenuity is required. What are the public want, or what are the society wants, and those things can be generated, I think together all of us can do, as well as the forecasting services, which coming in a very big way from the atmosphere ocean forecast, what we call it. We have seen that weather forecast is very important from the disaster point of view also. Very heavy rainfall, extreme rainfalls are happening nowadays, and because of that a lot of damage is happening. Still due to satellite data, cyclone cases, we have seen a lot of lives can be saved, but still lot of improvements are required, lot of efforts are required together. So those things we can do, and location-based services. We have started already with the Map My India. Some of the services we have started, but still that also can be done. And then, as I told, capacity building, which is the in thing. Without that, we cannot do anything, because for the new players are coming, they have to learn these things, and then with our experience and their enthusiasm, we can do together all those things. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajkumar, for your excellent presentation. We now would like to invite, now like to invite Mr. Radhakrishnan, Chairman and Managing Director, New Space India Limited. New Space India represents the new hope for New India in space. New Space India is the commitment from the Government of India. It's a show rather than a tell that Indian industry is moving from a supplier to a co-traveler in space. I would like to invite our speaker to expand on these ideals and to give the rest of us the hope, the idea on how we can all collaborate, how the era of the space agency is moving forward to the era of the space nation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I think it's really a happy occasion for me to be participating in this particular event. I only have one slide here, but I think I'll rather give a little talk rather than what is there in the slide here. Okay, so good afternoon to all the distinguished dignitaries and the guests present here, and possibly participating in the virtual mode as well in this particular session titled Space 2030, which is Space for Sustainable Business. I'm so happy that it's being organized by Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce, FICCI, ISRO Department of Space, and the participating companies. I'm happy to be part of this particular session involving the delegates from institutions, agencies, including the industrial fraternity from India and abroad. And before I just start giving my views, I would just like to say that I represent New Space India Limited, NSIL, which is a Government of India company under Department of Space. And we are also the commercial arm of Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO. Actually, we were incorporated very recently during March 2019 to promote the enhanced industrialization of space activities in India, which primarily means we need to move more and more operational activities of ISRO to the industries. The idea is basically to commercialize all these ISRO space products and services to the global user community. That is the end goal for us. Now, when we look at the vision for NSIL, it is primarily to enhance the sustainable space business for the future in the country, and I feel it will be appropriate for me to briefly touch the kind of achievements Indian space program has done very briefly, because why I say that, because our dependence, NSIL being the commercial arm, the dependence of NSIL on ISRO is so high, and we derive all the technical know-how and the infrastructure facilities that are available with ISRO, which we are planning to give it back to the industry partners. Now, if you look at the space activities in India, I think you would have heard quite a bit on the Indian space program, but I will just very briefly say a few highlights which has more relevance to NSIL. Now, if you look at the space activities in India, we began nearly almost 5 decades during 1960, and the beginning was so humble that it started with the sounding rocket program. And I think the space agency ISRO, which was created at that time, That was the only space agency, and even today we have the only space agency in India for the last 5 decades. Over the years, I think ISRO has, if you look at the achievement, ISRO has developed generation of launch vehicles, satellites for Earth observation. We have communication, navigation, space and planetary space science missions. Now, if you look at the space technology and its applications have since then become one of the very important accomplishments of modern India, with the societal and economic fruits of this high technology touching every facet of human life in the country. Now, India can today boast of having a state-of-the-art operational constellation of Indian remote sensing satellite systems, what we say as IRS satellites, which are providing services not only to the user community in the country, but is also to many other countries around the world. We have been able to penetrate in the area of remote sensing. The other side is the operational INSAT systems, which has enabled a phenomenal growth, expansion of television coverage, enhanced communication capabilities, as well as it has contributed to the improved meteorological observations. And is, I would say, I'm very happy to say that it's one of the largest domestic communication satellite system that exists in the world today. Now, with such a multidisciplinary operational indigenous space system in the country established with well-coordinated efforts, has brought in synergy between the highly diverse systems of science, technology and applications. And we have many industry partners here who have been supporting the Indian space program for almost several decades. I think the emphasis of the fact that India has the inherent ability to build globally competitive multidisciplinary technology systems and services, previously considered as a preview of only advanced developed countries, is no more existing today. I think I would say it was the emphasis that was given to the self-reliant approach in developing space systems that has enabled India to not only tune these systems precisely to meet our national requirement, but also to master these technologies and establish leadership in such a niche area of activities. Now, during last year, I think these efforts of ISRO has enabled India to emerge as one of the 6 spacefaring nations in the world. And as most of you may be knowing here, during last year in June 2020, Indian space sector underwent a major reform wherein Government of India announced unlocking of space sector, India's potential in space sector, with an idea to basically open up space sector to private industry players for their enhanced engagement in the space related activities. I'm not saying that they have not been doing earlier, but the kind of engagement and the responsibility the industry partners are going to take up is going to increase multifold in the coming years. Now, post space reforms, the commercial space business mandate of NSIL also has tremendously got enhanced, and we also have been mandated to take up much more responsible businesses. Now, if you look at the major business portfolios that NSIL is today concentrating on, as you can see on the slide, we have some 6-7 verticals that we are presently looking at it, basically. So one of the major business portfolio for us is in the area of launch vehicle building, where we'll be considering all the operational launchers of ISRO to be put to the industry for further development. The another major activity will be owning and operating the satellites. So today what we are planning to do is NSIL will try to build the satellites through ISRO, or maybe in the future some of the private industry players also. We would like to get them launched. Then we like to operate, own and provide services to customers. So NSIL is going to emerge as the satellite operator also in India. In addition to that, some of the service segments which are primarily very dominant and which are very close to our hearts is the launch services, where we provide the launching of all customer satellites using ISRO operational launch vehicles. We are not going to build our own launches. When I say the operational launchers, we are building rockets, it's only the rockets which are being built by ISRO. Today, if we talk about the operational launches like PSLV, GSLV Mark III, or maybe in the future SSLV, and any other vehicle that comes up, it will be the responsibility of NSIL to take it to the industry and start getting it built and provide services on that. So we are not going to design or develop new launches per se. Yeah, another important segment is with respect to so in the area of services, we are looking primarily at launch services and also the satellite communication services. I think as I'll just say a few words on that, how the space business is going to go in the future. So communication satellite services will be one of our major revenue generating parameter. We'll also have expertise in developing the ground segments. I know we had several rounds of discussion on this particular topic. So establishing the ground segments for the international customers within or outside country also will be one of our main portfolio of activities. In addition to that, the last and one of the very significant factor that is going to play a bigger role as far as the participation of industry is going to come and making India to emerge as one of the space manufacturing hub will be the technology transfer. I know we have been transferring technologies earlier in kinds of, I would say, very bits and pieces where parts, components and chemicals. And now that time has come, the bigger aggregate of the technologies which has been developed by ISRO has to be transferred to the industry. And NCL will be the single nodal agency who will be responsible for taking up this particular activity. Now, I think I just wanted to give a little bit a glimpse of how the space or maybe global space industry is looking at it. Now, if you look at the global space industry, I think there has been several studies done by a lot of consulting firms. Numbers are differing, but I'm not going to go exactly into the kind of numbers that you're looking at it. We talk about the 360 billion is the global space economy, of which almost 270 to 300 billion is the satellite industry. But what is more important is in this global commercial satellite industry, the major chunk of the revenue lies in the satellite services and the ground segments, basically equipments, or maybe it could be even ground stations or equipments. Almost 90% of the revenue of the global space economy lies in these particular components. So when we say talk about the global satellite industry or global space economy, we are talking about two segments. Basically, one is the upstream segments, which basically involves the satellite manufacturing, launcher manufacturing, launch services, and to some extent ground segment establishment. So this is one side. The second side is the downstream segment, which basically involves the satellite services and the services which are given by the satellite operators. In my view, and based on the assessment what has been done, almost I would say 90% plus lies in the downstream segments. But I think it goes without, I don't think anybody will deny, if we need to have more downstream business in the upstream, somebody has to contribute in the upstream segment. So NSIL today is primarily looking at investing in the upstream segment because we have the available expertise of ISRO in building satellites, launch vehicles, launch services. So somebody has to take up the upstream segment to invest. So today our plan is in the future we will be investing quite a bit amount of money in the upstream segment of the business, which will basically enable the industry partners or service providers in India and maybe outside and to generate more commercial revenue in the downstream segment by providing services to that. So this will be one of our thrust area of activity and in the coming years I think we'll be taking up a lot of launch production and satellite operational activities in the future. So this is going to be one of our thrust area. So in a nutshell, to summarize, I would like to say that our primary mandate will be to do as being a company, being a central public sector enterprise under Department of Space, Government of India company. We are into full and full commercial space business. Our end goal towards generating the space for sustainable business will be industrialization of space activities in India. And as I already told, we will be contributing very heavily and significantly in the upstream business investments. And at the end of the day, we will be trying to enable India as a space manufacturing hub. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I wish the panel session a great success and much more deliberations in the time to come. Thank you very much.
We will now move on to what I think is usually the best part of these conferences, the panel session, where we generate discussions and not just listen to one person go on and on. So I would like to first invite our moderator for the session. I would like to invite Mr. Sudhir Kumar, who has been invaluable in setting up the series of programs that we have done at the India Pavilion during Space Week. It is only thanks to Mr. Kumar's inputs and guidance that we have received, the great feedback and really set up the quality of the programs that we've had so far. Mr. Sudhir Kumar. I would also like to call back. Mr. Radhakrishnan. Unfortunately, Mr. Sudhir Kumar has not let you run away so fast. So, Mr. Radhakrishnan, please join us again back on stage. Next, I'm happy to invite Mr. Ramchandani. Mr. Ramchandani will be finishing half of his daily steps, just coming up and down again. Mr. Ramchandani, please. Very glad to have you back on stage. Next, we'd like to invite Mr. Who do we have? Next, please. Next, we'd like to invite Mr. Yamazaki-san. Mr. Yamazaki-san has brought with him an excellent delegation from JETRO, and he has a very interesting presentation, and he will have much to say. We are very happy to have Mr. Yamazaki join us. Sanjay, I think this is 2/3 of your daily steps. Back on stage, Sanjay. And I'd also like to invite Mohan from Agnikul. Agnikul is also one of our young, not that young anymore, but young startups in the space sector. And we're excited to have you on stage. Mr. Vivek Mittal, my friend, will be joining from online. He has got up really early in the morning to join this discussion. I hope he's had his coffee. Vivek, can you hear us?
I'm calling from New York City. Am I audible?
Yes, perfect. Strength 5. Thank you for joining us, Vivek. And we also have Mr. Dr. Hegde join us. Dr. Hegde has been a mentor to FICCI for many years and would have joined us, but unfortunately he was not able to travel at the last minute. But he has kindly consented to join us online, and he will elevate the discussions further. I will not take any more of your time. I will now give the mic to Mr. Sudhir Kumar. And so we are running quite late. I hope all the panelists keep their remarks brief. We have more time for questions and we have more time for discussions.
Friends, good evening. I think probably this is the toughest job in a stipulated time, managing the eminent speakers on the right hand side and left hand side, and now the virtual thing also. To set the discussions on the sustainability is a very, very, very tough probably subject, where normally a business is sustainable probably when the demand is more and the supply is less. Because there is a gap always, the resources and the production will have enough bookings, and the long term the business will be assured for the people who are doing the business. Since it is more demand driven and profitability will be very high, volumes will be very high, there will be less risk, and people will come forward for investing. So these are all any business parallels. If you see, the sustainability would go like this. But unfortunately, space is in every aspect that you say, this is opposite. The risks are more, investments are very high, volumes are very less, quality aspects are very high, and expectations of the people are, let us say, for 1 rupee I should get 100 rupees revenue like that. Okay, in spite, so in amidst all these tough business parameters or business goals, running into the space is a challenge. Is really a challenge. That's why most of the government agencies, space agencies, first they will come into the business, come into the, let us say, program. They will first set the initial settings and slowly hand over the business to the let us say tier 1 structure people, after that tier 2, after that tier 3. That is the sustainable business what we see, especially whatever you take it as, you take it as NASA, you take it as ESA, anything, it will go like that. And the other space agencies have started quite early, and now India perspective, if I see, we started this particular venture, like no longer this routine production operation should be handled by the government agencies. Slowly we have to offload to the private sector or even public sector, so that who are in the running the business. That was the probably the space business. So having noted these points, probably I think first I will, as usual, go to my old friend ATR, whom I am working with for last couple of first radar project we started in 2002 in L&T as a part of SOG Mark 3 project. Sir, first, how you look at it, the profitability and the investment perspective and risk perspective, the space business, how it should be looked at, what is your message?
So Sudhir, as you know, ISRO has always driven space activities in India, and the message of Indian space is that it is for civilian use, peaceful purposes, and societal value. So underlying is the relevance of space for society, and to that extent, as an industry, we felt that we have to support this because it is relevant for sustainability of the society. But if any investor were to look at what we've done in the last 50 years, it might not look exciting at all. The growth rate has been slow. We've built a lot of capabilities, but unlike any other industry, the scalability has been low. What I see right now is that we are at an inflection point, and the government of India has very rightly chosen this point for opening up the space operations for inviting industry. And I think what encourages us is what Mr. Radhakrishnan said, that at this point in time we see exponential growth in the downstream segment, with the focus on data analytics, with the focus on applications, with all the tremendous potential that the data from space can be of value. We see a lot of downstream growth. And what that means is that for people like us who stayed upstream, we would have enough work to sustain this growth. And so that's why we believe that there is opportunity for us to grow. We've invested, 50 years of efforts in building our capabilities, and probably we can now leverage this to the next level. We can play a bigger role and probably step into the shoes of the ISRO project management teams and rely on the government to support us with the R&D and with looking at newer technologies. We should also be aware that we will be exposed to large competition, and we'll have to compete with global players, with emerging technologies, with larger economies where the government is investing in building newer technologies, and we'll have to survive against that. So how nimble we are, how we exploit our innovative ecosystem will decide how we will survive, and probably that explains why today we have reached out to the innovative ecosystem within our country because they are crucial for our sustainable growth. So I would agree with you that it's challenging. It's not a regular sector. If I go back to my shareholders and say that, we are looking at this as a growth segment, I will struggle a bit to explain to them as to what my business plan is. I would, find it hard to face business analysis and stuff like that. But I think we have to go by the hunch that this is a transformational moment and we have to seize the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice perspective. Probably I think risks and other things have to overcome by messages, by innovation and cost competitiveness. Vivek, I hope you are listening to us. I just moved on to you in this perspective, which model we can adopt or we can benchmark with respect to the USA?
This is Vivek Mittal, right? Right here.
Yes, Vivek Mittal.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, sir. Our company, it's an AI big data insights firm, and it's a classic in that sense, an Earth observation, entity, and we're working on solving problems for ag, climate, and energy. And there's some work happening on the national security fronts as well. And our view is that there's tremendous commonality across these different sectors on account of this common data that is just draining from space. You have the synthetic aperture radar, the microwave data, the active sensors that can see through clouds, vast parts of Africa and Asia are covered with cloud cover, so optical data sets, won't cut it. So we are trying to, combine these different data sets, including hyperspectral, superspectral, and field solutions for, the ag sectors. And as has been rightly pointed out by several commentators before me, these are very, very hard problems because it's not just the data. You have to convert the scientific and the machine data into agriculture data. So you need to transform it. The agriculture data then has to further be transformed into financial data. So a lot of us have, like my own background is in physics and finance. So when you are setting this data to the bank, to the insurance, to the credit, so you have to have a very deep understanding of how the ag economy works, and including the farmer network. So in that sense, you start becoming a hybrid. We're a small company, but just selling data, as ISARO has also been saying, is not sufficient. It's necessary conditions, but for sufficiency to be attained, one needs to understand the ecosystem at large, the complexity, the challenges, and tailor the analytics accordingly. And wherein, the data that is coming from space is just a black box to the end user. The farmer doesn't want to know whether it's radar or optical. You need to talk the language of the end user, of the farmer, of the banker. And for fisheries and maritime, again for the for the Coast Guard, for the Navy. So that language has to be transformed, and you have to have an understanding of what the market requires in great detail. Otherwise, there's chance of a failure, and young small companies like ours, will just not survive. So it's imperative that we have that understanding, and we work with giants like ISRO who can support us, and we can act in a synergistic manner. Thank you.
A supplementary question to you. Rather say the demand for these particular applications, whether you take it as insurance, you take it as banking, you take it as anything, is huge. A few companies only doing this excellent job. How you expect that you meet the entire gamut of requirement with the less number of startups or less number of companies? How you will meet the entire demand?
I don't think it's feasible for small startup to address the entire demand. Just as a data point, the ag problem is, in my view, or there's a world view, it's a credit problem. It's an agriculture credit problem. In India alone, the credit deficit ranges from $600 billion to $1 trillion. So, there are multiple schools of thought. You could just start small, say work with State Bank of India or some NBFC, and then all your precision agriculture, all your satellite data, all your farmer network data is a sub. It goes in to build your credit model, your financial, your insurance model, your structured finance model. So even though this, the meeting today is on space applications, end of the day, space data is one input amongst other data sets which will allow you to solve the ag problem. So that insight, that understanding, companies like ours, can be the connectivity tissue and can help transform that data. But here your success is also a strong function of your funding. So the private markets are massive, right? I mean, they can just pour in hundreds of billions of dollars. And I mean, the companies can stay private for an extended period of time. So you don't have to tap into public markets in order for you to grow. So, there are companies in India. I mean, you can grow rapidly if you can get the market traction and if you know what you're doing and the investor buys into your logic. And the other thing to bear in mind is that the ag market is in trillions of dollars. So it's not just India. I mean, India might have regulatory, aspects which are different from those in Africa, from Latin America. So our thrust has been to operate across multiple geographies, multiple verticals, to hedge, these different the businesses from each other, and for them to be resilient. Again, the data infrastructure, the data is common to all of them, but the application layer has to be customized for the end user. So that sophistication of understanding of the markets is critical, and therefore I've always maintained that we have to be driven by business professionals in ag and finance as opposed to players in space, even though that is required. So it's both necessary and sufficiency conditions have to be satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Nicely you have narrated the business perspective also. I'll go to Mr. Yamazaki. What is in the Japanese perspective, how the industry ecosystem is all about, and how it is exactly mapped, the entire ecosystem?
Thank you. First of all, in case those of you wondering why a Japanese person is sitting among the fellow Indians, I do have some heritage in India. I lived in Mumbai for 4 years, and as I was coming into this room, I was feeling like sort of like alien, a lot of Indian people, and then I saw Radhakrishnan, a familiar face, who I have visited his office before. Now a new role. I didn't know this, but then I felt home. So thank you so much for inviting me to your panel. So the ecosystem in Japan traditionally has been driven, like any other country, by the government, and particularly by the space agency, JAXA, Japanese Space Agency. However, more and more, the new space companies have been coming in and managing to inspire the VC funds to invest in the company. And so I would say that the current ecosystem in Japan is primarily driven by the private sector, and more so in the new space like us, Axel Space. So it's a very exciting period, because when you have a VC money, what this forces a company in the new space industry to do is to somehow grab the commercial opportunity. Otherwise, the VC will not let you, sleep. So it is a very exciting period, and I can tell you, because we're talking about business, it is very, very lucrative in my perspective. Thank you.
Nice, thank you. Thank you. And now, Sanjay, I'll not ask you about your interests. I'll put the question like this. In the satellite market, especially when we talk on international cooperations and international collaborations, they expect that they should pick up some business from other country. And we expect that we pick up some business from their countries. For sustainable business, how these expectations will exactly match the actual ecosystem on the ground?
Thank you, sir. So I think in general, especially from the space industry standpoint, for a business to sustain, I think cost definitely plays a very, very, very important role. If the cost of your space asset is controlled, then the cost of your service to the customer might be very exciting. And that can enable to capture a large chunk of the market. Now, if you stitch this together, international cooperation can play a very, very important role. And that's how we have been building. India, we're well known for two things, right? Our IT industry, the second is the space industry. And a lot of companies in the US, in other markets, have actually flown their satellites from India. Now we are trying to take that one step further, where we can also look at building systems here so that their costs, especially in terms of having the asset in orbit, is on check. Now, you transition that towards the downstream application. Like, like I think everybody here agrees that 90% of the business value is on the downstream. So now you can capture that value and transition it towards paying customers.
Very nicely said. See, I was also sharing this perspective with some of the industrial giants. I was telling that you can no longer work as a production person. Let's say one electronic industry is there who prepares a lot of hardware. You have to assume a role how to generate the business on the downstream. Probably you have to go out and create the business in the downstream. So downstream, if you create a business, that will enable satellite industry to grow, that will enable launch vehicle industry to grow. It is a reverse approach probably. I think one launch vehicle will create business for 10 satellites, or 10 satellites will generate a business for 10 times the satellite value for the downstream applications. I think you have touched a very nice point. And the same question goes to our Moin also in the launch vehicle segment. Many apprehensions are there on the small satellite launch vehicles. Why? Because there was a tie-up between, let us say, should we go for multiple satellite launches in a big satellite launch vehicle? Even though the standard question could be for maintenance, these small satellite launch vehicles are used. But what is your perspective? What is the risk analysis that you have done? Let us say when you go for small satellite launcher, when your business maybe after a couple of years later, when it is seeing the downtrend, what is the recursive or what is the corrective actions that you propose to take so that your business is sustainable?
Thank you, sir, for the question. So I have two perspectives towards it. First one is, if you see how we'll be sustainable as a launch vehicle business itself. The first part is like we see there's a change in the market. As you said, the constellations are the next big thing. So we don't have a big satellite and a big launch vehicle launching. So we have now smaller satellites and a small launch vehicle. So there's an emerging trend that has happened. And now what we've seen in this satellite industry is like not only the conventional approaches, just like the imaging companies or the communication companies, we've seen non-conventional approaches that have started to come up. So we've seen multiple industries such as pharmaceutical companies trying to use space as a platform. So we've had data storage in space because the cooling is absolutely free. We have those industries coming in. We have the construction companies trying to use space again. We have entertainment industry trying to come into space. So if you start compiling all of these things, this is starting to becoming as a revenue that is going to be recurring in its growth. So once this is started to establish, we try to see that there is a demand for the launch vehicle itself. And now we've also heard about this deorbiting protocol that has started to come, which will allow these satellites to be only in 5 years in the space itself. It's going to become like an orbital real estate itself, which means if you are a launch vehicle company, there is a recurring business for you. So that's the first cache that they have there. The second cache that has been started to come up is more towards about how even the bigger companies are starting to use constellations. And the last 10% you need a specific launch vehicle that will complete the mission. So you talked about maintenance. Yes, after 3 years, if they still want to launch, they need a launch vehicle again. So the best part that how we've done, how we wanted to survive is we've designed the vehicle itself that is configurable and modifiable accordingly to the needs of the customer, rather than like just having a vehicle and asking the customer to board with us. At Agnicul, what we've done is we've designed in such a way that any customer starting a ranging payload from around 30 to 300 kgs will be having access to the vehicle and they could fly their own missions. It's more of a dedicated missions that we want to offer. So keeping this mind in perspective, we saw this trend happening up in the last few years, and that's how we were also like pushed or propelled towards like having a modifiable vehicle, a configurable vehicle accordingly to the customers. And I think in the next few years, that's how we're going to sustain. So,
Excellent answer you have given. That means the innovation will create the market.
exactly.
Rather than the conventional market like communication, navigation, the new applications you will shoot, and that will maybe Amazon, they may have every city wise some couple of satellites.
Exactly.
Probably such kind of. I think that's the good answer. Too many people who have got some apprehension. Sanjay, can you say that again? Small satellites. When you say again, the small satellites also has got a many people have got apprehension that these satellites will not survive more time in the outer space, and it requires maintenance, and it is difficult. It is the cost of maintenance is much more than the see what is the risk parameters, risk analysis, or risk mitigation plans you have for a sustainable small satellite market.
So, I think in general, what we have seen is there's a lot of proliferation in terms of COTS components being used in these small satellites. So if you look at the early space programs, right, like from the 1960s until early 2000s, there were a lot of technologies that were developed in space found their applications on ground. Like Shelley was mentioning about a lot of spin-off technologies. So now if you compare that with the electronics industry, right, the electronics industry has gone completely at a different pace. Now what we are seeing is a lot of these electronics by default can be used in space. You just have to try it out or test it on the ground really well. And the innovation on these electronics is happening at a very rapid pace. So what this is doing is this is driving the innovation also at a spacecraft level, where today, let's take Earth observation for example. Today, let's say a company has launched 3-meter resolution imaging satellites. 2 to 3 years down the line, they want to do it 1 meter. Beyond that, bring it down to 70 centimeters. Then again bring it down to like 35 centimeters. So I think it creates a market in itself that, for both satellite manufacturing companies, launch vehicle companies, because today the downstream provider who is using these space assets wants newer types of satellites being launched very frequently. I hope that answers the question, sir.
Yes. What is your perspective, Yamazaki?
Right. So I think we're really in an exciting time because in the past, because of the cost factor and also the lead time to develop large satellites, it was very difficult to innovate because it's risky. So you don't want to make mistake. Now, because we are making smaller satellites and the lead time is shorter, we can risk in doing new things. So, for example, we take a lot of risks to do something that no one has done before. And if I can remember, years back, in honesty, we were laughed at or we were criticized for, trying new things. But we also knew that by proving that it works, they will accept and respect us. So very happy to share that a lot of the things that we have now is really innovative in many ways. And only reason why we were able to do that is because we are developing microsatellite. Smaller, cheaper, and faster. Thank you.
Fantastic answer you have given. Vivek Mittal, can I go to you? Other than the conventional, because our Moin was telling, if you go strictly to the conventional business, probably at a point of time it will get exhausted or it will get saturated. So in the remote sensor perspective, can you see unconventional space applications from your land?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, this is an arena of creativity. So these are not solved problems by any means. And as everybody has been pointing out, the market is very dynamic and it's going increasingly towards higher resolutions, higher temporal resolution, higher spatial resolution. The defense markets tend to be extremely demanding, so extremely low latency, sub-hourly, even down to the minutes if you're going into air defense type of products. Somebody brought up, monitoring of the cryospheres, the three poles, Arctic, Antarctic, the Himalayas. I don't get the sense that these are commercially solved problems, or there's a concerted effort on part of the private players to address them. And so it's a matter of taking the first step, joining forces with established players, pulling in resources, convincing the investors, and then going for it. So certainly, one can be creative here and pair up with the right, scientific and business personnel to address these problems. Another passion of mine personally is soil moisture. So are there enough satellites, synthetic aperture radar satellites, hyperspectral data sets, both a combination of UAVs and satellites to be able to address this problem for agriculture, disaster management, defense? I don't think so. Just the data is just not available. So the applications, will take time. You need a lot of inputs from different customers, construction, mining, defense, agriculture, financial services solutions to field these. But there's a very big room for development and growth here.
Thank you. Now you are given a different dimension that space not only requires the technologies and the technocrats, but also creative guys, innovative thinkers, and how to convert these applications into a different perspective, and finance people and more lawyers. ATS sir, can you just throw whether the ecosystem is ready to take these such kind of challenges, and you expect how much time it takes to rather come to a level where equal opportunity will be given to all the players?
So I would say the time is ready. Maybe the ecosystem is not ready, but we can't afford to lose the time. So the ecosystem will have to be built concurrently. We will have to learn with mistakes. At least from an Indian perspective, we are putting in place some ecosystem in terms of regulators, in terms of the financial community, in terms of end-use requirements, the government's outlook. So all of that is happening, industry associations, and I think that is setting the stage for creating the ecosystem framework. But I would say that we have to seize the moment, and we can't wait for the ecosystem to be ready to move forward.
That is a nice message to many stakeholders. I go to CMD NCL having listened to all these things. What is the new direction or dimension we have to add to the space business in addition to conventional satellite market, conventional launch vehicle market, conventional satellite application market?
Thank you very much. What I find is, based on the discussion our colleagues have mentioned, there is a space for everyone, right? I think what I was during my talk explaining was more from a agency level perspective, where huge investments is required to undertake a particular mission. Say, for example, when you're talking about a communication satellite mission, we require a huge investment in terms of building the satellites within hundreds of millions, the bigger vehicle for launching it, then another hundreds of millions to own and operate it. So I don't think the startup-like companies will be ready to take up those kind of missions. The missions, I think those kind of missions should be left to a space agency or governmental company like us, who are ready to fund hundreds and millions of dollars into this. But our target will be, when as a company, when I invest in such huge businesses, I need to have a kind of an end customer committed to me. I cannot build and launch a satellite imagining somebody will come and take the services from that. So at least from that perspective, some customer is ready to give and guarantee that he's going to utilize the services. On his behalf, I invest, and as a downstream segment, he makes money by providing services to the customer, and we also kind of recover the investment that we have made. So it becomes a win-win situation for those kind of missions. Now coming back to the smaller satellite segments or the startups, where the investments are not going to be very, very huge, like you had mentioned, you can afford to take a risk. I cannot afford to take a risk. Okay, so because small is beautiful, so I think you can invest less and take risk and do more innovations. So I think there is space for everybody. I think after listening to them, I also realized that I cannot consider everything being hundreds and thousands of millions of investment. There is always space for everybody to invest and move forward. So I think each stay in their own area of operations and then let the total system flourish. But only one thing what I would like to convey here is, Dr. Ramchandani also has mentioned, we should try to, at least the agency level, government level companies should try to encourage and create an ecosystem in the Indian industry market, so that the people start building the rockets and they also start building the satellite, give it back to us, and we invest on their behalf and do the missions, so that the entire ecosystem of building satellites, launches, and all the technology innovations happen within the country, and we become I would say in the future, as a kind of a space manufacturing hub. With our own investments, which every company is capable of doing it. If you are able to invest hundreds of millions as a company, you do it. Not able to do a bigger investment, you do on the technology innovation. That is how this whole ecosystem is going to grow in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Radha. I think because of the paucity of time, we will not be able to. Stretch this session beyond that. Before that one, Mr. Hegde, would you like to say a few comments? Mr. Hegde?
Sir, you are on mute.
Can you unmute, please?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Vicky, and good evening to all, and happy to join the distinguished panelists. Having been unexpectedly dragged into the panel, let me tell a couple of words. See, if we take 4th October of 1957, when Russia launched Sputnik as man's clear intention to get into space, use space, exploit space and all, the whole space base across the world is only 64 years old. See, it is not even one generation old. And from zero to where we have grown today, say 360, 370 billion or maybe 450 billion, including the strategic sector, that shows the way space has grown. And space has made so much difference to mankind, civil societies, both in the civil sector, commercial sector, strategic sector, and every facet of human life the space has touched in just 64 years of its coming to be known or existence. So the question of sustainability is probably a bit premature to worry about or discuss. See, coming back home in India, India having been known world over as a populous country with a small land area with many issues to be addressed, considered space as a technology intensive, high investment or capital intensive, long gestation period kind of area. But the visionaries in India, having realized, thought that little longer than the developed countries, we would invest taxpayers' money or from the exchequer and grow this sector to a level of maturity. And today, India has all the reasons to be feeling proud that yes, we have reached a level of maturity. And now it is the resolve of the government to introduce reforms or bring path-breaking reforms in every sector where the industry or 500 million youth, the gender, everybody participates, whether it is technology, whether it is developmental, any activity in the country, because for a country of our size with 1.3 billion, unless everybody works, the country will not grow. This is a clear vision of the Indian Prime Minister and the government as such. So obviously, there is a lot of scope, as my colleague Radhakrishnan mentioned. There is hell of a lot of space for everybody. And he has also told clearly how step by step the industry would become a thick part of the space ecosystem. And along with the world, since India, I mean, all the big spacefaring nations and others also are trying to go beyond Earth, Moon, Mars, or whatever, a lot of need would arise for establishing connectivity, habitability. And initially, when we had discussed the theme of this session, when Vicky had discussed, they had also added one line in the brief that how the learnings from outer space could eventually become useful for sustainability of mankind on Earth. See, recycling water, recycling air, recycling waste. We have not reached that level, hopefully. But I think there is a hell of a lot of scope for everybody who wants to participate, because space technology, space applications, and the benefits that are cross-cutting. I think I will not drag on because we are already 9 minutes beyond schedule. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I think the message for the panel is very clear. We should not confine ourselves to the conventional things. We have to keep thinking outside also, out of the box also. And technologies, technology transfers, and other aspects. Before that, Kelly also was mentioning how they will be used. The pressurization will be used for the bus, let's say, manufacturing. How a pressurized suit, yesterday was telling space suit, how it can be made use. Even thermal wear, whatever we use it for radiation shielding, how it can be used for the military clothing in the areas like Siachen. So many applications are there. Probably space should not be seen as a space application. Probably it should be seen like everywhere and to everywhere. I think before couple of, I think 4 minutes time is left for the closing the session as given by the organizers. One or two couple of questions I can take, probably very brief and very precise from the audience. Please, sir.
I just want to ask, you are telling that small is beautiful. But it is not that we are going too ahead with the small. I also like that, okay, the small satellite can do a lot of things. But really, whether long term it will be beneficial.
So the question of long term and short term won't come into the picture because of the deorbiting protocol. That's why I mentioned about that. Because irrespectively how big of a satellite you build and you put it in LEO, after 5 years you still have to come down. So instead of risking your eggs in one basket and building a big satellite and risking the launch and risking everything in space, it's better to do small. Even if there's a failure, you can replace it with another satellite, just another launch with a small launch vehicle. Your cost, your insurance, pretty much everything comes down. Your maintenance, everything comes down. So that's why small is beautiful.
The cost is fine, but I'm saying junk.
Yes, sir. Now that's where the next big question comes about. Is there someone working on space debris? And I think a lot of the countries are actually taking up today. Even India is actually actively looking for that. Other spacefaring nations are also looking to clear up the space, because we know that there is a lot of opportunity to be created in space. Likewise, somebody has to clean up the mess. And there are companies today, as far as I know, there are at least 6 companies that are working, as well as spacefaring nations are also working towards it. So yes, as we create the mess, we'll clear it up.
Yeah,
I think that's how it is.
We have to think about that. Now
Yes,
itself we can think about it.
Definitely.
I think Rajkumar sir, that also adds to the revenue of this space.
That's what I told. That's what I told. We have to think a long term.
Something creating business for it is like a antivirus. Create a virus and antivirus. Please, sir.
Yeah.
Please.
So just to add on to the debris stuff, I think from a manufacturer standpoint, I think providing responsible access to space is also important. So I think, as a manufacturer, we always request the customer that have a deorbiting plan, have a thruster, so that you can get your satellite down, turn it off after the mission life is done. I think these are also regulatory processes, frameworks from a lot of countries are enabling this to happen. where the national regulator itself is saying that, you know, after the end of life of the satellite, you have to deorbit your satellite. So I think everybody together is looking at responsible access to space and not creating too much of a debris problem in the future.
Good.
Yeah.
Good, sir. Good. Please.
Hello, my name is Rainer Horn from Space Tech Partners in Munich and Brussels. On the last topic, maybe a different thought on that. Already for a few years, we have been helping to moderate workshops around the world with investors in space, making investors be responsible investors. Just like for modern investors who are in Wall Street, it's no longer proper to invest in tobacco or something else companies. So you're not investing in a dirty space company, a company that is not responsible. So I think that's probably an interesting way to tackle it, to try to have the private investors being responsible and the governments anyway. And I think then the problem solves itself.
Thank you. One more.
Hi, yes, Logan Gleeman, Lunargistics USA. The question kind of builds on his with alternative investment opportunities. Are you seeing this a lot easier as technologies develop, as well as collaboration ensues between nations? Thank you.
Good.
Is investment opportunity a lot easier for retail, civilians investing in space assets?
Good.
Okay. Right?
Anybody else?
Maybe we can talk right now.
I think I'll just take your question. I think the part is like before we've been like talking about democratizing space for everyone or making space accessible for everyone. But today, as you can, hello, yeah. But today, as you can see, we're talking about space sustainability. Yes, collaboration between nations, collaboration between companies, exchange of resources, usage of facilities. Yes, the investment cannot be shared, obviously, but apart from that, other things, definitely if we form a kind of a strong collaboration and complement each other, there is a strong output that can be coming out between nations as well as between companies. That's one way to look at it. And I think that's very important because majority of, even if you're integrating something, you are dependent upon your suppliers, you are dependent upon your customers. So exchange of ideas, collaboration, whether it is at an investor level or a supplier level or at a customer level, obviously you have to provide an end output. So there is an opportunity for everyone, irrespective of what type of stakeholder you are. That's it.
Combining the different questions, space debris investments. I have a slightly probably different perspective. So I believe in the market mechanism. So regarding the space debris issue, it's all about awareness and ability to pass on the cost to the end user. So as long as the end user is willing to absorb the additional costs required to deorbit or be responsible for operating satellite, it is possible to do. Technically, it's possible. For example, our satellite has deorbiting mechanism. The struggle is how to pass that on to the customer. Currently, we cannot. So we suffer our profit. So how do we solve this? Awareness. Create awareness among the public that there is an issue called space debris. And so let the market realize that we cannot continue to invest or support companies that pollute the orbital environment. So market mechanism. Solution, create awareness for the issues that are up there in the orbit. Thank you.
And regulations in the place parallelly with the awareness and convincing the people and negotiating with them, I think that is a good responsibility. I hope the panel has, I think it is 5:15, the time passed, the time given to me. I hope the panel has justified for last couple of, I think, more than 45 minutes on various topics. I think most of the topics are very relevant and very important. The perspectives are given by the panelists are also very valuable. I hope this message will be carried to the all the stakeholders and all the guys who are showing interest, especially to get to know the sustainability of this particular space. I once again thank everybody, Mr. ATR, Mr. Radhakrishnan, Sanjay, Yamazaki, Moin and Vivek virtually. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sudhirji, for conducting an excellent panel, and very sorry to have imposed a time restriction on you, and very sorry to all of our audience as well for cutting this excellent panel short. I'm sure the discussions when we started off, there was a bit of a feeling that we've probably spoken about everything. Shelley's already covered this. Dr. Radhakrishnan already covered this. What more can the panel say? But it turns out the panel can say much, much more. And the panel discussion today was, I think, exceeded all of our expectations. It is now my pleasure, and with a hint of sadness, I would like to call upon Mr. Suyash Singh to give the vote of thanks and probably end this conference. Mr. Singh.
Thank you. So as you know, we require at least 6 coordinates to locate things in space. I had 3 things to locate my notes for today's session. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. So the today's session has let us know, and I'll take an analogy to probably explain this, that Silicon Valley in the space started after the World War II. Governments realized the requirement of technology development. From there on, Dean of School of Engineering, Dean Stanford University, Professor Fred, started encouraging all the professors to start companies, start technology companies. From there on, we saw a flurry of companies, HP, Lockheed Martin, IBM, Facebook, Google, and a lot. Probably space industry in India is, starting the similar way. ISRO has done tremendous. We all know that, and there are no words to appreciate. I mean, it's beyond that. Now it has come to the point where academicians like IITs and ISCs are taking up, starting a new companies with entrepreneurs like us. And from here on, we need to rethink of space 2.0, a private space 2.0, and accelerate much more faster than previously. Having said that, I'll introduce myself now. So I am Suyash Singh, co-founder and CEO at Galaxy Space. We are a IIT Madras incubated company based in Chennai, and we are building satellites for advanced Earth observation. Now, what is advanced about that is we are doing synthetic aperture radar indigenously built in India. So, moving ahead, I would like to really thank all the session speakers today, starting with Shelley. Thank you so much for your words on Space for Good, and your work is much appreciated. I'll also take another notes to see what has been said before. So I'd also like to thank representative from African Space Agency to talk about SDGs and how are things shaping up at African Space Agency. I would congratulate my friends at Bellatrix and Truva Space for the MOU signing. I probably met Mr. Lakshmesh yesterday, and he asked me that, would you like to sign one? And I said, yes, why don't we do that? And can we do it in a day? But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So we would like to sync up again, sir. I would like to thank Dr. Radhakrishnan for his wonderful speech. I would like to thank Dr. Rajkumar for telling us the downstream applications, how downstream applications are very relevant in terms of space industry. And we see a emergence of downstream applications going ahead, and this is how probably all these space companies, be it satellite or launch providers, will move ahead. I would also like to thank the panel for the wonderful discussion. A lot of my friends are sitting here, Mohin and Sanjay. Mr. Arun, definitely, your words on, your relationship with ISRO for last 3 decades has been tremendous. Your words have been taken, sir, and I hope you don't struggle with your investors to convince them to bring more technology. If you struggle, then what about us? I would like to thank Mr. Sudhir Kumar, Dr. Radhakrishnan again, and I would like to especially thank, Yazamo Kisan for coming here and not being an alien, for sure. Thank you so much, audience, Vicky, for giving me this opportunity, and it is lovely to be a part of this Space Week. Thank you. Oh yeah, sorry.